Thank you for the reminder. Okay, let's switch. So let's first go to the minutes that we had for the 10th of October. And now it's not going to load for me. The notice was sent out a little while ago about a couple of weeks ago for the meetings, or last week for the minutes for the meeting. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to look at those minutes. Why don't we go first?
I suspect Confluence is having an outage right at this moment.
All right, okay.
I've just
Well,
saw a notice come up. Yeah.
okay, all right. Well, let's just take a look at the minutes for the 13th, which is our face-to-face. Has everyone had a chance to look at that? There are lots of details inside there. Shelley did a fantastic job of writing that up, so thank you, Shelley. Has anybody got any questions for the minutes for the 13th of November, our face-to-face meeting? If not, would someone like to motion that we accept the minutes of the meeting?
I haven't read every word, but I've read a fair bit. So I'm happy to motion.
Thank you,
There's a
Heath.
few typos and the like, but other than that, I think the general sentiment's there.
David McKillop for seconder.
Thank you, David. Appreciate that. So I will launch a poll. So this is approval of minutes for the 13th of November, our face-to-face. Okay, and we have 70% of over 70% of people who have voted, so I'm kind of cool with that.
Landon's a +1.
And Landon's a +1. Okay, well, I'll go ahead and end that poll now. So with that, we have, with the +1 from Landon, we have 14 people affirmative and 11 people abstaining and no negative. So that motion has passed. How about for the minutes of the 10th of October? Would anyone like to accept the or motion that we accept the minutes of the meeting on the 10th of or the 30th of October?
I'm happy to motion to accept the minutes.
Thank you, Landon. Anyone second?
Yeah, I'm happy to second that, Steve Swinsberg.
Thank you, Steve. All right, I'll put up another poll for that. Oops. A +1 for Landon, thank you. Still at 66%. I'd like to get over 70% of people voting if possible. Even if it's an abstain, that's cool. Okay. So I'm happy to go ahead and close that poll now. with a +1 from Landon. That means we have 12 people affirmative and 16 abstaining and no negative. So that motion has passed. Thank you very much. Okay, in other news, the AU-based reconciliation has completed. I gather that as of yesterday, that was all done, and that there is a preview of the AU-based implementation guide, version 6, that's available. The link will be there in the minutes for you. And a snapshot of the Connectathon of the implementation guide is going to be created for the Connectathon, which includes all the normative changes that came from the ballot, and that is expected to be published a little bit later today. So that's good news. Regarding some actions that we have outstanding, there was one on me, which was to investigate how to distinguish any new comments on the AU Core TD Charter from the previous year's comments and how that's been addressed. So I've addressed that information. Interestingly enough, I don't know that I'm going to be able to show you that now that Confluence seems to be out. I'll just give that a go and see if that, oh, looks like that's rectified itself. So really what we've done is at the bottom, we've got a number of comments. We put out a request saying that people could make any updates on the comments before the end of before I think it was around June last year or this year. And then we pushed it to the community and we kind of described the intent of the vision and the charter statements. And I'm just going to read back what we had here. That a couple of months deliberation, we brought it to the community. The explanation we have for, because I think one of the comments was around the words, use of the word seamless. And the definition that we're using is happening without any sudden changes, interruption, or difficulty. We brought that to the community back in August, I think it was, and I think the community were happy with that, and so they voted not to make a change to that. But we did note that there is going to be another opportunity to look at the charter again around June next year, where we kind of revisit. So every year we'll revisit it and we'll say, you know, is this still appropriate for where we're heading? And if so, then that's all good. So that has been completed. There are a number of other action items that are still out. Daniel's not around at the moment. She's still on leave. And there's a couple with Brett and Danielle that have been deferred. They'll look at finishing those actions up at some point. In terms of events that are coming, the Connectathon is happening in Melbourne. The HL7 AU Connectathon is happening in Melbourne on the Tuesday the 9th, Wednesday the 10th of December. I do know that sold out faster than a Taylor Swift concert, really. That was very quick. If you would like to go and you haven't got a ticket, then join the wait list, particularly if you're in Melbourne, because it could be a chance that someone is going to duck out at the last minute, and you know it could be a last minute call. Can you turn up? If you're Melbourne based, then that might work. Brett.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it might be worth trying to actually get a ticket directly on Eventbrite today, because I think they released an allocation that was held over. So there may be a few come online, but definitely email if you're interested as well.
Thanks, Brett. Okay, so that was all. Now, Kylin, who I think has joined the call today, was very kind and did a quick CDG update and at the face-to-face the other day. And I would think maybe it would be worth just going through and giving you a quick overview or a snapshot of what she what she did. Now, Carlin, I don't know whether you would like to do this, or are you happy for me to kind of give a summary of what you said?
I'm happy for you, but I'm also happy to do it as well. Whatever you prefer, Marvin. If you had a plan with this, go for it. But I'm also happy to just talk through it if you like.
Oh, yeah, well, you can talk through it. It's better coming from the expert rather than the pretender.
You're a full expert, in my opinion. Okay, well, AUCDI R3 is kind of what we've been working on. As you guys know, just for background, we were working on continuing the chronic condition management stuff. So in this one, looking at assessment scales and scores. We've also been talking about encounter record and what does that mean and what kind of data is important for that. And we also did, much like the TDG priority backlog pitches, where members of our community were able to nominate things from our backlog and say, hey, we think this is important, so we want to include it. So that's sort of where we are now. And then the next slide. So for AUCDI R3, we've been working through each of these bits over the last couple of months. For AUCDI, we've now added a health assessment data group. We're working on an assessment of function data group, really looking at those ADLs, starting to think about aged care and other related areas. We have a development milestones data group as well to start looking at the child development space. And then we've been working on a bunch of the priority backlog items. So you can see here, I think some of them came from members of the TDG around blood pressure, updates, pulse regularity, but there's been also updates. We've added vaping summary and medical device and other bits and pieces. We do still have a couple of things on the backlog, but we are working on those at the moment. They'll probably be held over to R4. So this is the new content that will be added. So it's only the things in the black. So the white is just there for context, but you can see sort of the details there in terms of what we're including for each of them. So they're all some of them are higher level, like the vaping summary, but some of them have gone into a bit more detail. None of these have been added to what we're calling core, like AUCDI as part of core. And I don't know, did I include a slide on that one, Marvin?
I don't have one on that one.
So I think in AUCDI, when we moved from AU clinical data for interoperability, from AU core data for interoperability to AU clinical data for interoperability, we recognize our scope is a lot bigger than just core. So we now have kind of tagged specific data groups within AUCDI as core, and those were the things that we did in release 1. But the things that we've added from release 2 and 3, we haven't tagged them as core yet because we haven't really got a process. So as part of the last CDG face-to-face, we were also talking about what is the criteria that we want to that we want to tag within AUCDI, what we think is core, which would pass to you guys, and you guys can think about what does that mean for AU core fire IG. So for now, none of these have been tagged as core, but we were developing criteria around that. So we had some proposed criteria that we put forward to the CDG, and we're working through our responses now, and we'll come back to the group. And I'll be sure to share that with the AU Core team as well, so that you guys can have a say and have a look as well.
Cool.
In terms of where we're looking to publish, draft for comment is to come out just before the end of February, and we're aiming to then do our usual comment period and then publish in June.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And one of the things I think you did mention at the face-to-face was that if there were things that we need to flag that need to go back to the CDG in terms of the stuff that we want to pull from the backlog and maybe push into AU Core R3, that's something that you would also look at for us.
Yes, definitely. Anything that came out of your priorities in the pictures, we're definitely watching those to see if there's anything we can do to support that, to get that in AUCDI. And as part of our criteria for including things as part of what we're tagging core in AUCDI would be TDG AU core requirements. So if you guys identify any parts of AUCDI that you think should be in what we're calling core, then we would obviously look at that and then include that in as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Carlin. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Marvin.
So now we'll go into a report back on what happened in our face-to-face a couple of weeks ago. in Canberra. We had over 60 people attending the TDG session. There was a big mix of roles, usual, software developers, architects. It was nice to see that there was a lot of health informaticians in the room. I think partly a spillover from people who hung around from the CDG day as well. But it was nice to get that good spread of people who were involved in the sessions. The topics that we covered, we first had an overview of AU Core and AU Patient Summary. So Landon did a summary status of that for us. Then Graham did a quick summary, well, he did a session on functional limitations of receiving an IPS and what that really means. And he really went into some of the details of that. Keith did a section on hot topics around patient summary. We had the R3, AU Core R3 community pitches. We went through a backlog prioritization for AU Core R3. And then the agency presented some information on consumer record sharing services. So just as a summary of what we've done, this is, I guess, what R2 looks like. So the new resources that we created in R2 were healthcare service, medication statement, and related person. And the ones that are highlighted in the black outline were the resources that were updated originally in R1, but updated in R2. And some of those were specifically for e-requesting, so they needed changes to a number of those. And also, some of them were required for AU Patient Summary. So if you look at the mix of the stuff that's been done, we've actually achieved quite a lot in release 2. So you can kind of pat yourselves on the back because there's a lot of work that's happened in the past year around interoperability, around e-requesting, patient summary, and core. So that's good to see. So that was just a quick overview of what we've done in R2. And now I'm going to hand over to Heath to chat about patient summary and a kind of a report back from the face-to-face. Do you want to share your screen, or do you want me to skip through for you, Heath? And if you're talking, you're on mute.
I was muted. Thank you. You can share.
Okay.
So yes, as Marvin said, we had Graham talk about handling of IPS documents, and he basically went through a couple of areas around this. I mean, we've been focusing on producing documents in the past, so we thought that it was worth having a bit of a chat around handling documents. But in particular, when we're receiving an IPS from overseas, and then look at what are the expectations and capabilities when we receive an AU patient summary compared with an IPS. So basically, what do we do when it is not an AUPS, and what do we do when it is an AUPS was the main area of his interest. So just on the next bit, he started there as Graham's role as FHIR product owner. He's requested to international affiliates that we need to make it very clear and explicit about whether instances of the National Patient Summary IG are compliant with IPS. Next, please. And we actually do that very well. Next again. And his statement literally was, it's very clear. So we have stated what he was looking for of the international affiliates, but his comment was, but make it clear in the first paragraph on the homepage. So currently we've got some very clear items on some back pages, and he just wants to bring that to the forefront. So next slide, please. He then went on and talked about handling of an incoming IPS. And so when you receive the IPS, what do you do with it? Well, you can display the narrative, you can display the individual data, or you can potentially import some of that data. And he went through some of the rules around the narrative, CSS rules, multiple languages, text links, etc. And what are the implications of rendering that data yourself versus importing the IPS? And he certainly acknowledged how much harder the latter is. But so really what he wanted us to start to think about in our AUPS IG is what are the expectations of handling an IPS when it is an AUPS document and when it is not an AUPS document. So in those considerations, what he was kind of went back to was around always having the ability to fall back to a display. Now, we don't say that at the moment. He's basically saying we should consider that as something that we put in the IG as an expectation for handling the IPS data. And in particular, when it's not an AUPS. And also what we should consider around importing data, but that's more in the context of it needs to go back to the CDG. As Marvin said, we had a lot of clinicians in the room, which is really good to have this discussion. And basically, they started raising some concerns around this and wanted to be able to talk about that at the CDG level. The key factor was how do we know an IPS is an AUPS and not an AUPS. So we actually got to the a motion which passed, which was to make it very clear way of reliably identifying that an IPS is an AUPS. And we now have a technical discussion on that going on in Zulip, if you're interested at all. So, on the hot topic side, I had previously put a call out for hot topics, as I have done again for the Connectathon coming up. So if you have a hot topic on AUPS, please go and raise that. But we had a couple of responses to this particular session, and it was about consuming patient summary, funnily enough. So it actually really lined up very nicely, even though we had multiple parts going on, we had a really common theme in the end of the day. So we were looking at how to understand what is the patient summary content that we wanted to be able to consume, and whatever the purpose of consuming that might be, whether it's some sort of processing or clinical decision support, importing it into our system, storing it, reusing it. And we had some presentations from Landon and Andy and Grant that provided some of their experiences and challenges and concerns about doing this kind of handling of IPS data. We then went on to a workshop and to talk about the considerations of patient summary and the value of them, and these were the results. So we had some really good responses around the value, and really there was some common themes around reducing of transcription, being able to reuse the data, being able to get data where when we need it, up-to-date data, all those sorts of things as you would expect. So there was some really common themes came through on that. We then looked at what considerations that we would need. So we went through a worksheet, and on the basically after the tables, one more, please. Yep. So this was kind of my analysis of the feedback we got from 12 tables. Basically, we were looking at per section of the IPS, what were some of the key considerations, and probably not surprising, some of the responses we got back. And finally, we were talking about whether we should consume or not to consume these particular sections. And not surprisingly, there's a couple at the top there that were quite high, and there was some extra items at the bottom that a couple of tables thought might be relevant. So on the end, there were some common themes, not just at per section, but across generally. duplicates, reconciliation, coding, provenance, currency, and accuracy. And if for those who've been around for a while, these are common issues that we've been talking about for a long time. And finally, we finished up the session around what are these sections that we wanted to be able to consume. And again, not surprisingly, problems and allergies are the key ones there. So that was the summary.
Thank you very much, Heath. And then we, after lunch, we kind of went through the R3, looking at the R3 backlog and prioritization. But the first section of that was, as you probably remember, there was a call out for expressions of interest for people to nominate concepts or resources that they think we should push into release 3 of AU Core. So we had 7 hands went up that said, yeah, I want to put something forward that says, here's what we're going to look at. So they came and they had 3 minutes to do a pitch on why they thought these particular things should be in. And to give them all credit, they all came in under their 3 minutes. I think they all came in under 3 minutes. So it was well done. So Brett was first up. He wanted to include family member history profile to AU Core to support the way we capture relationships and hereditary conditions. So when decision support is done or preventive care is needed, that can be done. Stephen put a request in for care plans. He says it's essential for connected care, care coordination, and modern digital health tools enable computable goals and shared planning. Corey from Epic said diagnostic report would be really good if we could get that into AU Core. And he was pitching that as a grouping structure for observations and binary reports, similar to the way the OBR segment is used in a V2 message today. Sanjeev pitched for medication administration, inpatient-focused medication administration profile to accurately capture when ordered meds are administered. Charlotte was on the other side around dispensing. Wanted a medication dispense profile with some additional extensions because she kind of presented that it represents real world medicine use and generates clinically valuable data. Liam was all around searching and how we can add more some clarity to how we use search or guidance to how we use search, particularly count and sorting to make sure that clients can retrieve the most relevant results, particularly things like latest vitals. And the background for that was a lot of the smart forms and things that people are using. And then Ilya closed the sessions with his view on write back. So this is when you've got questionnaires and you want to be able to write back that content into a clinical system. He proposed well-scoped write back use cases with provenance requirements so systems can track who wrote what when and have a clear auditable updates for that. So that was the expressions of interest. Then we asked people to go in and I guess rank what they would, how those resources, those pitch resources would impact them over the next 12 months. So, what is the most impact for you, or what would be the most impact for you over the next 12 months? Medication dispense came out as the top ranked, followed by diagnostic report and care plan. So you can see the list that was there. So it was all in all, it was a good session, and it was good to kind of get a sense for what people were feeling in the room at the time. So and by the way, these are not things that are guaranteed to happen because we as a community still need to plan what goes into the back or is pulled from the backlog or is included in R3. But this was good to kind of get a gauge from the team in the room as to what they wanted. Richard.
I guess impact was interpreted as of benefit. Yes. Because if something disrupts you, that's also a big impact.
Yeah, that's true. I think this is more a case of which would be valuable to us in the next 12 months. Okay, so let's, David?
Well, thanks, Mum. Just in the case of diagnostic report, there's been a there's been continued meetings like fortnightly now with the HL7 Orders and OBS International about trying to get guidance about how to group observations, whether you group them because US Core groups the observations via a diagnostic report, but IPS International groups the observations by an observation type grouper when it's a panel. And so there's a bit of, and Rob Howtham's going off to Cologne for international next week, and he's taken over some other proposals about using group a resource to do things. And so there's still a fair bit of things to get sorted. And I think maybe we might be in a better spot by about next April 2026.
Okay.
But, yeah, so just want to keep that one in mind.
That's interesting. Certainly, in some of the stuff that I've been doing, I've managed to use the diagnostic report to good effect around collecting observations and things. So it'll be interesting to see where they land with that.
Sorry to interject, Marvin. I don't have the ability to raise hands. I just want to supplement what David said.
Okay.
So far, there are about at least 5 different ways of representing sort of diagnostic reporting. I want to use the word reporting rather than the concept of diagnostic report, which is a file resource by itself. But notwithstanding what David has said, that it would take a while for the international community to at least to come to some form of agreement as to how whether or not there is actually possible to have eventually a unified way of modeling diagnostic report thing, in particularly grouping of the some of the test panels. But I think that I would like to suggest that we see the diagnostic report profile creation in the AU Core a bit independent from what the discussions within the international community, because I think diagnostic report profile itself is one of the profile that I think would be needed when we come to the ultimate end game of creating diagnostic reporting via IG. So that piece of work, in my opinion, needs to continue, but bearing in mind that there are in discussion internationally at least 5 different ways of grouping diagnostic reporting information. And the work, if we get approval to go forward, needs to be conducted with the awareness of what is going on at the international space.
Yeah, it's a good point, Stephen. And I guess I'm quite interested in this space, so I'll be keen to see where we land. But I think it's important to keep moving forward if that's what the community needs and wants. Heath.
I agree with everyone, but I think there's, in particular in Australia, we've got some existing requirements, like functional requirements, or that we need to, which only the diagnostic report can actually support, and that's our presented form, our PDFs and stuff that we shift around. So I think there's value in it as a standalone. So I completely agree with Stephen. I think we should be thinking about grouping. That's great, but I think we also need that container as well.
It's interesting because this was brought up by the EPIC team, and given that they are a worldwide organization, they'll also be looking to the international where we land there. So clearly for them, they would want us to align as close to that as possible, because that I guess would reduce the effort on their side. Okay, so then we went into the AU Core backlog, R3 backlog discussion. So if we look at what we've currently got in our backlog, we've got a bunch of resources and data type profiles that we have that are available to us. So back in 2023, when we kind of kicked this whole Spark program off, there were, we asked people, what is it that you'd like to see in AU Core? And a whole bunch of things were thrown up. We whittled that down to the core pieces in release 1. We expanded that in release 2. And now we're looking at R3 and saying, okay, well, what next is the priority items? It was nice that from the pitches, 5 of the items that were already in the backlog were put forward by people saying, you know, we really think that these are important. We had a couple more added onto the mix, which is nice. And then we asked people to discuss at their tables, you know, what would you like to see, what's important, and then individually each person was able to go up and put their vote as to what from the backlog they thought would be good in R3. And so out of that, we have gone and collated the numbers, and we have a top 10 of items that people would like to see. Medication dispense was at the top, diagnostic report second, provenance, search enhancements, which was a new item that Liam had raised, pregnancy status, family member history, and so on. Number 10, we had a joint both questionnaire response and also implants or wearable devices. So this is the things, these are the things that people in the room at the time said, these are the things that are most important to us. And the ones at the bottom where people said, actually, we'd rather you didn't bother, because these got negative votes. Coverage, which is already included in e-requesting, composition already included in patient summary, and then some of the others people just didn't think much of in terms of, do we need them right now? So that was a view of people in the room as to what they wanted to see. So if we look at the items on the list from the backlog, we can see that the ones highlighted in blue are the ones that people said, yeah, we're interested in these items. And the ones that are in pink and struck out are the ones that people said, yeah, we don't really need in AU Core at the moment. And there were a couple of others that people added and said, we'd like to add these to the backlog, which are measure and measure report. So that was the backlog discussion that we had. And then we had the agency walk through their AUCFI, or Common Foundation for Interoperability. I don't know whether you want me to kind of chat to this. Let me see if he's on the call. I'll just check and see Ricardo is on the call. He is on the call. I don't know whether you want to chat to this, Ricardo, or do you want me to go through it? It's just a couple of slides on the CFI stuff.
Yeah, I'm happy to. So sorry, do you have? Yeah, okay. So I think what we brought to the meeting was more of a logical view of our intent in terms of setting up this framework or this foundation. So we started by introducing this picture that explains at a very high level what AUCFI entails in terms of deliverables, which you can see there in blue, and how those deliverables interact with the different activities and more kind of detailed solutions that are being delivered out of the agency. So from this kind of very high level overview, we went into sharing detail of the consumer record sharing services specification. So this is a set of services which target interactions from a consumer perspective with a national health data repository. So this here is just something that we've also introduced as part of this AUCFI thinking. So before we kind of went too far into the detail of things, we introduced a concept called shared health information package. So this is what we considering as submissions of information to the national infrastructure, and we kind of provided a kind of an overview of what a submission would entail. And then we went on to talk about, so we started at the conceptual logical level, and then we started to talk a little bit more about how that may be implementing using the FIRE standard. We didn't get too far on this one because at this stage, I think we then realized, look, people were probably a bit lost with the logical and conceptual view of things, and we've decided that we would probably just take the feedback from the discussion away and potentially come back with a different perspective on things. So I think maybe again the logical and conceptual views were probably more of an internal thing for us, and I think they just caused a bit of confusion. So we ended up not spending too much time on the implementation of this module, which is where we kind of then wrapped up the session with more work to come from the agency's perspective, to socialize this with the community and have further discussions and kind of figure out how this might gel with people's views of how we should be doing things.
Cool. Thanks, Ricardo. Much appreciated. So that was an overview of what we went through on the face-to-face meeting. Mandy, you got your hand up. Oh,
sorry, everyone.
Oh, yeah.
The SHIP. Can you explain that for the interoperability? Kind of, yes.
Yeah. So this is a conceptual model. Okay, so it's a kind of a more conceptual, logical view of what we think should be the metadata that goes alongside the content, if that makes sense. So we're thinking that for us to be able to achieve what we want to achieve in terms of policy requirements, clinical safety, and just things like that, we can't just have, let's say, the health information being exchanged directly with the national infrastructure. So we think that for it to be what we want it to be, it should be accompanied by a set of metadata, which is what this SHIP concept is trying to represent. So you'll see in here that we say that the content, which is on the bottom right, should be submitted alongside information about assembler, transmitter, creator, author. So there's some aspects related to the exchange or the trusted exchange network, and other bits and pieces. So this effectively, what it's trying to convey is that it's more than just the health information content. It's a little bit more than that we would like to see exchanged with a national health data repository. So this is also a very much kind of consistent view with what we currently have in the My Health record, which you don't just submit a CDA clinical document. Alongside it goes a lot of metadata that's effectively almost like an envelope that then just contains the content within. So this is a very kind of similar view to that.
Thank you. That is very interesting. And what I was asking is very greatly explained, is that also regarding interoperability also has its security issues. Is there any effect on choosing APIs that could support or secure this? Is there any thoughts along that side?
Look, I think there'll probably be more. There'll probably be more implementation questions, I think, than when you start to bring it down to an API level. And I think there's certainly security considerations in all of this, but I'll probably say that comes probably more down to an implementation level in my view. So we're definitely including metadata that has, in our view, a direct connection to increased security, because we're capturing things which we think will help lift the overall security and safety of this exchange. But I think that's probably then something that will be implemented at a more technical level, and I don't think we go into that too much in here.
Brilliant. Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks, Mandy. Thanks, Ricardo. All right, so we have an AU Core change request that we are looking to go through this week. Is this you, Brett, or is it Heath that was going to do this one?
I'm doing this one.
Perfect. Do you want to own the screen, or do you?
I might do that because it's just a bit easier. Let me just make sure I can share. So this was to just take a look at one of the issues that's come through into the AU Core channel. This is from Stephen Chu, and I don't know, Stephen, do you want to maybe just introduce this issue? It's the smoking status.
I can't remember exactly what I wrote, so if you want to walk us through, I can then supplement what was said.
Excellent. That's good. So yeah, so this was one coming through around the smoking status profile and potential additions and enhancements to it. So there's a few ideas in here, and so we bring it through with discussion. There's I've got some kind of background information that we might consider with it as well. So primarily the issue itself. We have a set of codes on the smoking status profile that provide some pretty basic information about whether someone's a smoker, ex-smoker, or a non-smoker. And Stephen's noted some specific guidelines and information that maybe goes beyond this kind of basic kind of need. And particularly,
yeah, I now remember what I put in now. So if you may, I can provide some supplementary information. So when we, in my previous clinical practice and also interactions with GPs, so what actually is clinically relevant and important in terms of smoking history type of information, in particularly the date, time of starting the smoking, and then the cessation time, last cessation time, which is clinically important to use to calculate the risk as to how many years sort of after cessation, what would be the impact in particular to the respiratory problems and also the cardiovascular systems and also stroke risk, etc. So those and also the PEG years as to how much was being spoken, smoking in terms of PEG years and how many years the smoking has happened or the tobacco use has happened. So those are clinically relevant and clinically important data. If you want to exchange the data for in referral or other purposes to support clinical risk assessment, those were important data points that, in my opinion, are based on clinical practice, international literature, and also conversations with clinical colleagues, respiratory specialists, and also cardiologists. Those are the data points that are considered to be clinically relevant and important. And in reviewing the profile that we have, the profile itself lack those kind of critically important data points to make it useful in terms of continuity of care and also collaborative care. So it's my passion that this profile would benefit from revisions to improve the content. So therefore, those kind of clinical purposes can be met, if you may.
Well, yep, cool. So yeah, so I think so that's good. So yeah, notably there was kind of specific values noted there that are important. So to kind of put it in context of what's happened, so I did a little research on what's around other places. We have our basic binding to a status which covers four concepts. If you look at US Core, they have a much more complicated value set defined that includes a lot of other aspects, including additional contexts and other kinds of usage, which in some ways I think is not perhaps typically implemented in a lot of systems that way. And I really kind of wanted to go back to what was done in the CDG. So the CDG in AUCDIR2 expanded the definition, expanded the set of elements that were discussed, and I think some of the things Stephen is after are covered in this material. So it includes some useful things like quit date, um, uh, the overall years of smoking, which is an indication of when things were started as well, and pack years as well as specific terms. So these were things that were looked at by the CDG and some workup done around those things. So we do have kind of some modeling basis on that information. So in some ways, like the question is like what would we move into scope for AU Core, and what the criteria we're using to do that. So I think, Stephen, does that make sense to you? Like that we
that
have
makes
some
sense.
of this stuff.
That makes sense. But I would also say that the tobacco smoking summary, the data group has a bit of inconsistency with the alcohol consumption. Like say, for example, the alcohol consumption has the commenced date in there, which is not in the tobacco smoking history. So the inconsistency sort of aside, but I think that there are sufficient international literature that says that the age of commencing of tobacco smoking is clinically important because it determines sort of the addiction patterns, how easy the patient will come off smoking, and also the kind of respiratory and cardiovascular damages. The earlier is the smoking initiation date, the more severe are the damages. So those kind of data I'm very passionate about. So I would plead that TDG, the AU Core TDG consider sort of a more complete, if not necessarily complete design in terms of these two data groups or these two profiles.
Kylin.
Hi, thanks, Stephen. I appreciate you kind of waving the clinical flag. I think for the CDG, we definitely, those things have been raised. And I think in our, as Brett is showing in our future roadmap, that a lot of those things that you're talking about, like those, some of the dates and things have kind of been identified. But I think when we were scoping down to start with what we thought, because I think when we first included smoking in AUCDIR1, we were quite strict with what we were thinking as core, core of the core. What's that core clinical data that would serve as many use cases as possible? So for us, from our point of view, we kind of really did scope it down quite tightly. And I think for our first release, we actually only had the status and maybe a date or two. And in our AUCDIR2, that's when we added the pack years and things like that, pretty much based because of the lung cancer screening registry. I think the surveys, the screening tests or tools that were out there required these additional data elements. So while we also recognize that this is really important, it was the question of, is it in this release? Is it something that we build upon? So I guess the same question for you guys, like we're happy to readdress this in AUCDI in our future release, and maybe can add additional things, because we do know all of these things have clinical significance, but is this what we want to be exchanging in like the first couple of releases? And that was the question we raised to our clinicians. But we're also happy to take that back and identify additional ones if that's necessary as well. So just wanted to kind of put how we got to here, I guess.
Yeah. So I think, so there's even more things, I think, Stephen, that are relevant that you've mentioned in your ticket that haven't gone off the backlog yet of CDI. So that's potentially a way to kind of bring some of those things forward. The other part too is we haven't really surveyed any systems to know what is done typically at the moment. I believe some systems have some of these elements already, so I think that would be probably a worthwhile exercise if we're going to kind of expand scope to just really get a picture of what's implemented already.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of international debate at the international level on so fire scoping. So there is always the tension between the current implementation versus sort of supporting best practice. So if the fire standard itself doesn't have the ability, being stuck on the current practice and not sort of having the ability to move forward to support our best practice, and in particular in supporting chronic care, then we are always going to be stuck at the same place, not able to move forward. And that's one of the reasons why I'm passionate about and why I sort of keep waking up at sort of 5 o'clock in the morning to join international course. So it is important, I think, for those kind of regards. And I would plead that fire standards development not just be focusing on the current state, but also be able to support our best practices moving forward.
Thanks, Stephen. I think David was next, and then Heath.
Yeah, just quickly on that. That's classic data. Your ability to extend your data requirement as the requirements come forward, right? Like, why aren't they collecting the number of milligrams of the cigarette? Like, that'll be the next thing, right? So it's looking, I guess, at our data patterns all the time, and that's why we have to keep modeling to be clear we're understanding at what level of granularity we're at, and where do we have to be ready to extend. So. Definitely like hearing the extra data requirements going forward. But my dad started smoking at 8 and he's 91. And somehow he just quit on the drop of a hat. And I quit just like that too. So who knows what the research is going to show us. Thanks.
I think that's a good summary, David, as well. But I think no better people to do the requirements than the clinicians. So let's let the clinicians do their thing. Not to say that it shouldn't be done in with a little bit of oversight technically. I think there has been some examples of where there needs to be a little bit of coordination between the two groups, even if it's in a subgroup. But really, we need to ensure that it's pragmatic from the clinician's perspective, because ultimately they need to be capturing this data. They don't want to go over the top for their own time perspective. And then also there is the tension around what do current systems do. And I'm certainly advocating to some of the people, systems that I'm working with, that they should be looking at AUCDI as, if you're going to do rework on your systems, then have a look at how AUCDI. So I think we certainly encourage Kailin to progress there, and that's probably where Stephen needs to be focusing his time. But he's also got the technical aspects and knowing what's going on in international. So you're a real asset in that particular space.
Thanks, Ricardo.
Just I think on the back of what we were just saying, could we use, I'm not going to say this specific example, but can we lift this up a little bit and maybe have a discussion at the upcoming harmonization group meeting that for set up, I think this could be a good opportunity for us to probably finesse the ways of working.
Great suggestion. And I think the other one is I've provided some feedback to the CDG around device where as well, implantable devices. So where it was kind of like, oh, is this going to work technically? So I think there's a couple of examples that we've got. But this is a classic one, but I think the need is here. Like certainly a conversation I've had this morning, we want to be progressing this tobacco smoking one. From a technical perspective, certainly if the clinicians are up for it.
Yeah, I think like knowing some of the systems, like there are implementations of some of these ideas in a lot of systems, like especially like quit date, units of use, like cigarettes per day kind of measurements and things like that. So I think there's a mapping to do and some understanding, but I think there's certainly. I think people can look at it from both ways and say, what should we implement in our systems, and also what do we implement now, and does it gel to the concepts that we're seeing? So yeah, I think it's a good opportunity, and I think we can keep working on that. So having said that, so we do have some materials to work with, and I think we should probably figure out in the kind of backlog and what we're going to do, what happens first, because there's quite a few new elements in here compared to the R1 of CDI. So we have to probably think about that. So the other thing I had, was like we do have our principles for inclusion in AU Core. So we can kind of come back to those if we want to think about, one of them is it's in CDI. That gives you some prioritization. The only thing probably I wanted to note in the definitions here is that we do now have use case identification in CDIR2. So there's been different tags placed on particular elements, and so core is one of the tags, and so I think obviously core is indicating that it's meant for us in AU Core, but we also have chronic condition management, and I think that was just a question for the group really, because we've got criteria that say content is included in CDI, but we don't specifically say things tagged for core. So we probably need to think about that. So these new elements are in the chronic condition management area, have been added for that tranche of work. So yeah, so I think I'm hearing that people are interested in this content. So we might need to think about our selection criteria and saying, if it's published at all, we care about it, or not. I don't know. That's probably a question. Yeah.
Thanks, Brett.
Yeah.
Was there anything more you wanted to do to close that out, or are we comfortable with where that's landed?
Yeah, I think it was more, get some information across about that, and maybe, an approach to how we might consider that. I don't think we need to make a decision today. But yeah, I was mainly talking to Stephen as well about how we might resolve that issue. And I think at the moment we were leaning towards we want to kind of go back to CDI and bring through things specifically that we would work on and do the prioritization and bring it in. And hopefully those things are covering the ground that the ticket says. So that was
Thank you, Brett. That would be great.
Awesome. Thanks.
And this is not a ballot issue, is it? So it's just something that we can continue to triage over time. Yeah.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, happy with that approach.
Yeah, so I think we'll have to, like a lot of these things will roll back, I guess, into what are we going to work on next questions as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Cool.
Wonderful. Thanks, Brett. I think you're up next for the preparation for the Connectathon. You're on mute.
Will help if I go for mute. So this is just a quick catch up on the AU Core track running at the Connectathon. If you've been to one before, it's very similar to the ones that haven't been before, but I'll just kind of point at some of the things that are there. If you have any specific questions, probably co-chairs and myself can help deal with that. Yeah, so we'll just work through that. So there's some, I put links in here. Hopefully people can just pick them up as they need to. I'll probably just talk to them. We don't need to go through a lot of it in detail. The event's there. We do have a potential of getting a ticket. So there's a bit of movement. A few people are kindly releasing their tickets if they're planning not to come. So there's occasionally tickets are coming up. So please, yeah, if you want to go, please do get on the events email as well. We do have a publication pending of AU Core. It's literally in staging now, so it should be there this afternoon. That should be coming through. That will be the version that we're looking at testing and using at the Hackathon event for kind of current testing. And that contains all our normative changes from the reconciliation. So they've all been applied. So it is very much going to be similar to the final release. So we're really trying to pick up any big issues or problems before we do our final release and obviously get some usage in. We do have a track kickoff call coming on. Oh, I didn't put the date. I will do that. It's on Monday, I believe. I better check that. But yeah, it's yeah, I'll make sure that goes into the minutes correctly. I don't know if anyone can see the.
Is that Monday the 1st?
Let me check. We'll go to our calendar, which is the only place I know I can find anything going on. We're lucky because we're in the maintenance window for HL7 International, so that's why Confluence went down. Yes, it is the 1st. So we've got 3 kickoff calls going on the 1st. So AU calls at 1:30.
There's actually
that's Melbourne
4.
time.
The Smart Launch one is there as well.
But,
Yeah,
awesome.
it's just not in the calendar.
Not listed yet. Cool.
If you
Excellent.
go to the actual AU to the Connectathon route page, all of the tracks are listed with all of their kickoffs.
Cool.
So it's probably.
Oh, yeah, it'll come up eventually. Yeah, that's good. So yeah, that's good, Heath. Thanks.
And I'll just put a plug in for the patient summary one as well. That's on Monday as well. You can find that one there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so that's good. Yeah, so if you're attending the event and obviously want to work in any of those tracks, yeah, it's good to go to the track kickoff just to get some info. If you're just interested, you can turn up as well. There's no restrictions. So I was just going to go through some of the things you might want to know about the AU Core track. We are doing a 101 breakout, and kind of supporting activities. So yeah, if you're at the event and it's the first time you're doing any AU Core or even Australian standard stuff, AU Core is a good place to start. So we're doing some intro breakouts and also even setting up a server from scratch. Michael Lawley's going to have go through setting up a test framework from scratch. So if you're really keen, you can probably have a Fire server up and running in a couple of hours. So we've got our test kit available. So the AU Core test kit is available. We'll have the latest version loaded into that test kit, and also the current official release version R1 will be there as well. So if you want to test against either of those, that'll be available. If you've got a server, that's a good way to check your implementation and see if you'll get and your coverage in terms of what you can and can't do. We have some test data for loading. So there's content there if you want to load information into your system or set up cases that kind of match that test data. That's a useful resource. That's all available on GitHub. We've got a terminology server which has AU terminology requirements loaded. We do have a reference server and a development server. So this is the development server available. And will have a Fire server running as well to test the latest snapshot. If you want to kind of interact with a Fire server implementing AU Core. for the event itself, there's a bunch of test scenarios. So that kind of has a bunch of AU Core usage defined, some supporting material, definition, information about interactions and going through things. So if you're kind of getting started or just want to manually go through some of those cases, there's some supporting material there to help you. And we do, I did want to note there's actually a server or client listing page where you can, if you're implementing AU Core or AUPS, we ask you to register your details on there. It's an easy way for people to help find your endpoints at the event and what they need to do to get access to the endpoints if there's any special steps. So yeah, we recommend you do that. It also helps us know who was there and they were doing something. So yeah, please do put your info on there, and that will help us people find you on the day. I think, yep. So the breakouts, I just wanted to talk about the breakouts. So we have some general breakouts, but also some specific AU Core stuff. I talked about AU Core 101, which will be kind of introductory session. Getting started with a file server, which will let you implement something. The agency is kindly hosting a intro to the HCA provider directory project. So that's one of that is the first Australian Fire Community Process project that's come through from the AFCC, the Fire Coordination Committee. Yeah, they're getting a breakout slot there to talk about that. It's relevant to AU Core because essentially they have implemented part of AU Core as part of the interactions you can perform with that directory plus more. So yeah, and that's a currently drafted fire implementation guide as well that people can feed back into. And we have a Fire IG authoring session, which I think will be not so much a how-to kind of session, but more of a issues and interesting things that people might need to know or want to know about Fire IG authoring. I think Graham Grieve will attend that session and give us an update on things around the Fire IG publisher. So if you're in that space or interested in fire implementation guides or just want to connect with some other people writing fire implementation guides, it's a good place to meet up and we can work out, what kind of support we can give to community people. And I think that's all I wanted to say about AU Core.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Can you flick up the next slide? Because we're going to go to a Menti.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah. No, okay. I can put it up.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Sorry, I dropped it already.
It's all right. So, yeah, there we go. It's been a full-on year, and it's been great to work with so many different people. I think we've learned a lot as a group in how we progress the standards process here in Australia. But I thought it would be good if we could just kind of take a stock of where we're at, what we've been doing, who's been involved, what you all think of the AU Core TDG, things that we've done well, things that maybe we need to improve on, and so on. So Heath's going to launch a Menti on that. So if you could just grab that screenshot or connect to Menti, or go to menti.com, and you can use the code 26268615 and go ahead and start to vote.
Okay, I just want to make sure I was unmuted. Yeah, so I've got a series of these, so we'll try and skip through them. We've only got 10 minutes left, so leave a little bit of time for Marvin to flick through, close off. But this one, we're just wanting to get a sense of how you've been feeling about the process and what sort of feedback we can get from you, but just getting a little bit of an idea of who's on the call today. And what's your involvement in Spark so far? So it looks like a few are still, we'll just hover on this question for a while as people get on. People are still joining the Menti, I can see. So So if you've been involved in some of the other Sparked events, that's what it is multi. You can select multiple. Obviously, you're here, so you're involved in the TDG itself. If you're involved in the CDG, if you're involved in the requesting, we also have had these testing events. The specific Spark testing event that we had back in June as a vendor, you may have attended that as well. I think our numbers got 21 out of 23, and they seem to be stabilizing. Oh, someone's still just joined. I might just leave it a little bit longer. One more vote and they'll move on. All right, I might move on. Okay, so also looking at your regularity, how often you come along. So if you've been to all of them, go right out to number 5. If you've been to none, which I'm expecting that no one has been to none, considering you're here, that's right on the left, number 0, but somewhere in between. So there, 4 is kind of, I've missed a couple, but most of them I come. 3 is kind of, you might miss one, come to one, miss one, come to one. 1 or 2, you've just only really returned, come to one also. Get rid of that QR code, hopefully somehow. How do I get rid of it? There we go. Now we can see a bit better. You can just join manually if you need with that code up the top without the QR code. All right, we've got 22. I might move on unless there's some last minute entries. Okay, how much do you agree or disagree with these following statements? So we're just, is the purpose of our calls been clear? Have they been collaborative and inclusive? And most importantly, for me, is whether we are wasting your time or not, whether you're getting some value for the time that you're putting in. We've actually collected some pretty good stats around how much time the Spark community has put into it, and it's just unbelievable the amount of time that people have been generous with in the process. So we want to make sure that you are getting value. We think that you're getting it, otherwise you wouldn't keep coming back. But yeah, we just want to sort of quantify that a little bit.
And to be fair, we wouldn't have made the progress that we have made without your involvement. So it really has been a great achievement, and by all.
And we also hope you're getting something back out of it as well, that you're actually, learning some stuff with it as well. So certainly, even as co-chairs and facilitators, we're learning from each other all the time. So it's not just the new ones. We're all learning to be better at what we do. All right. So what specific outcomes or moments from these meetings you felt was more comfortable, most valuable? So this one's an open-ended question. You probably got some sort of word limit, but yeah, we're looking for some specific things that have been more valuable. I've mentioned some of the test events that we've had. We've had some information sessions on Fridays when we were working through some new profiles earlier in the year, if your memory goes back that far. As Marvin said, it's been a long year. We've done a lot, we've achieved a lot, and we continue to do so. So there's What else have we been doing? Yeah, I mean, just the fact that we've now got a ballot that's not just a release one. Well, release one, that's a pretty significant milestone, but we're not just stopping there. We've got a release two coming out in February or thereabouts next year. So we keep progressing with new profiles, and as you can see from today's report back, we're moving forward again, and also pushing things back to the clinicians around other high topic, high value clinical concepts such as tobacco smoking to support coordinated care into the future, chronic disease management. I like the one right in the middle there, the shared knowledge from all members. That's beauty. Love it. That's what it's about. It's just like coming to a consensus by sharing our ideas, our concerns, our experiences.
We can skip through because we've got just 3 minutes left.
I might just sit on this one a little bit because I've still got a few coming through, Marvin, even if we don't. I might skip through the next one perhaps, but
okay.
All right, that seems to have settled. So if you're about to submit something, even if it's mid-sentence, click quickly and I'll move forward. Okay. How effective were, I will skip through that one. What has worked well in AU Core face-to-face? So we're going into some sort of basic retro. I'll probably spend 45 seconds, seeing I've got less than 3 minutes now on each of those. So keep it short. Let's get them in as quickly as you can. We're going through some retro questions here. So what worked well? What should we stop doing? What should we start doing? So they're the few coming forward. So see if you can bang those in quickly. Yeah, hats off to the co-chairs. So again, they're volunteering their time from their organizations. They put a lot of time and effort into preparing chairing these sessions and the slides that go into it. So I certainly put my tick on that particular item. All right, we move on to the next one. What should we start doing? Something that we're not doing that you think that would help the process? Give this one 30 seconds. Sounds like no one's got any ideas here, so I'll move on pretty quickly. Even if you put your thumbs up if you got nothing to contribute, so I can see that you're all happy. Yeah, I think that one on the right, that was interesting. We were talking about the clinicians, not the technologists around the not driving the tobacco. Yeah, there's certainly that aspect of trying to put ourselves as consumers into that view of the world. And what should we stop doing? What's wasting your time? And I think I'll have one after this, but I will hand straight back to you. And people can do that in the background. So I think I'll I think I'll hand back to you now if you want to take back control, and I'll let this one run for a little bit in the background, and then I'll move on in about 30 seconds for the last word, literally. Final word.
So very quickly, this is what's lined up. We've got the Connectathon coming up 9th and 10th of December. We're going to be publishing, going for our tour publication approval on the 22nd of January that week. And hopefully we'll be able to publish AU Core 31st of January 2026. That should be, not 2025. We also start R3 planning the 22nd when we get back from the Christmas break or holiday break. And then we will go into more R3 scoping and as we move forward. The next meeting, so thank you very much. We have had, let's get back on to this. Next meeting is the 22nd. You've earned a well-earned break for the end of the year. We're coming back on the 22nd of January. We will be meeting back. We've got a draft agenda that's there. You can go onto the Confluence site and you can find information about that, all the things that we'll be looking to do there. So that's it. Thank you very much for an awesome year. You've been a great crowd to work with, co-chairs as well, and look forward to seeing you in the new year. Have a great break and get recharged and back for some great stuff in 2026. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Marvin. Cheers, everyone.
Marvin.
Thanks, Marvin. Merry Christmas. Appreciate it.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
Have a great Christmas, everybody. Or Hanukkah. Everything.
Stop the recording.
Yeah, let me do that.